Welcome to Season 2 of Lead Speak, where we continue to empower the current and the next generation of SLP leaders in public education. Whether you're an aspiring leader, a seasoned pro, or somewhere in between, this season is packed with insight tailored just for you. I'm your co-host, Natalie Lebrun.
And I'm Judy Rich. Welcome to Season 2 of Lead Speak, school-based SLP podcast.
Hi, Lead Speak community. Happy holidays. We are just a few weeks away, and I know things at the school are just at an insane pace right now with all the meetings, all the evaluations, counting up therapy minutes, and looking ahead to 2025 and what that will bring for you. Today, Judy and I are bringing you a treat for a episode. We are having Michele Sweigart join us. You know, when you go to a professional development session and you just end up taking pages and pages of notes on your notebook or in your iPad, Stephanie is one of those speakers that the first time I heard her speak, I filled up pages in my notebook of insightful nuggets of information and some really thoughtful considerations that perhaps I've really never heard before. So Judy and I are super excited to bring you Stephanie and her message of compassionate communication and nonviolent communication in this episode. Be sure you listen in all the way through to the end as Stephanie gives us a really great offer to continue your learning on all things compassionate communication. Stephanie is a leading expert in mindfulness and compassion-based practices in special education. She is a certified teacher of mindfulness meditation, as well as a speech-language pathologist from the state of California. Stephanie has presented at numerous venues, including ASHA Convention. She's presented on speechtherapypd.com, and she's also presented at the SLP Summit. Stephanie has an unwavering dedication to empowering individuals to use clear and compassionate communication that underscores her mission to make a profound impact on the world of special education. So tune in, get your pens ready, and let's get started.
Hello, Natalie. How's it going in your world?
It's going great, Judy. How are you?
I'm really good, too. I'm looking forward to our dialogue on the podcast today. We're talking about a profound topic in leadership, compassionate communication. So, Natalie, will you introduce our guest and get us started?
Hey, Stephanie. We're so happy to have you on the Lead Speak podcast this morning.
Thank you. It's so exciting to be here. I appreciate your time and this opportunity just to talk about something I'm so passionate about.
So I need to share a little bit of background with our community as to how you and I started talking together. So this past summer, you were a presenter on SLP Summit, right? And
yes.
And you gave a really great talk about this thing that really kind of rang in my ear and really stuck in my brain, which is the term nonviolent communication. And I was just like, I have never heard of this before, but this is super cool. So I texted Judy right after your presentation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Judy, we need to have Stephanie on the podcast because I think she can definitely talk about this idea of how our communication with others will dictate everything moving forward, right? Everything from our relationship to others, but how we ourselves do just internally with ourselves. And so I reached out to you via Instagram, and you were just so lovely to respond to my message. And here we are today. So I'm super stoked. So tell us about your journey from when you became an SLP to now that you're giving professional development locally and nationally.
Yes. So I'm sitting here thinking about that, and I'm like, is it linear? Did I go from one thing to the next, or was I sort of all over the place in my journey, which is sort of how life takes us, I guess. Maybe people can relate. I see you're nodding your heads. I think, well, I started as an SLP, right? I was working for a contracting agency. I came out from Pennsylvania to California, and that was my role, to be an SLP. And I worked for this agency 6 or 7 years. But towards the end of that, I sort of started to get this push inside of me, this this idea that something was telling me. I had this strong innate desire to do more. I wanted to grow. I wanted to build. I thought, well, maybe I could start an agency. Maybe I could build my own family out here in California. I'm far away from my family in Pennsylvania. And that's it. It just started with this idea. And I was like, I'm going to create a business card. I'm going to come up with a name. It was simple like that. I just got this idea, but it's so crazy when I look back on it, because I look at the qualities and my character and where I was at that point in my life. And I thought, did I have any business wanting to go out and start a business or to be a leader? And yes, maybe I did, because everybody has qualities, I believe, in them where they can be a leader. But at that time, I was reactive. I was super reactive when something happened. That fight, flight, freeze really kicked in strong. And it was a lot of flight, heading to different places to try different things with different people if situations weren't working out. And maybe I was a little too impulsive. Maybe I didn't have as much compassionate communication or understand what that really meant. I thought I was compassionate with my clients and with the parents. But when I needled into nonviolent communication and I really learned what is really compassionate communication and all the different aspects of it, no, I wasn't quite there yet. So I had a strong inner critic at that time. So I was constantly judging myself or thinking about my actions or internalizing it, or maybe being harmful towards myself in the language I was using with myself. Or even my judgment towards others or the environment around me. So these qualities, it's interesting when I see where I was and how much I needed to grow and how life has just kind of miraculously, all of my difficulties and my challenges and my struggles really were the training ground. It was the training ground for where I am now. And luckily I was able to do the work and to find the resources and reach out to the people. I remember when I was leaving my agency, my spirit was telling me it was time to move on. I was really looking back to that agency for leadership. Like, can you mentor me? How do I start a business? I really want to start a business like yours. I want to do this. And I remember I hit some resistance with that. And unfortunately, it created a strong disconnection with the agency that I was leaving. And I think I was in this mind frame where, and I still live in this mind frame where I live in a place of abundance. I think there's enough. I think there's plenty for everybody everywhere. I think there's enough work. And I think other people, I imagine, maybe sometimes are living from a place of scarcity. You're taking what's mine. Like, this doesn't belong to you, or you're going to take away from me. And I just kind of felt that resistance or that unhappiness. And I said, okay, I need to go look somewhere else for leaders, for mentors to figure out how to do this. I tell people on my team now, because I have people on my team now that want to start their own business. And I encourage that with them. And they're like, how'd you do it, Stephanie? And I'm like, you're going to laugh. But the first thing I did was I went out and I got the book, Small Business Guide for Dummies. Those for dummy books that are out there. That was my starting point. I literally went to a bookstore and got Small Businesses for Dummies and just had to self-teach. And then life took me through more challenges, and I met people that offered me resources for those challenges, such as mindfulness and nonviolent communication. I saw the effects that it was having in my life. And I said, okay, I want to learn from these people. So I sought out those teachers and those retreats. And I just immersed myself in all those things that I believed were putting the light on my path and healing me in some ways, like healing me, and also helping me see all these other qualities, all these other gifts that I have that I wasn't gifting, right? Because it's only a gift once we take these aspects of ourselves and we generously offer them to others. But I had these qualities in me that I just needed to get to and have the confidence to begin to share with others and gift other people in that way. And that's sort of what took me down this road into leadership. I started my team. People started coming to me with their concerns and their problems. And I had to be available. I had to be present. I had to show up in a way where, how often are we crying as humans, not just in our field, but just to be heard, to be seen, and to know that we matter. And I had that responsibility now. I had that responsibility to be that person for them as the owner of the agency and bringing them on my team. And I wanted to make sure that I had the tools and the strategies, and I'm still learning the tools and the strategies, but that I was resourcing myself so I could resource them.
I really like what you said about an abundance framework rather than a scarcity framework. I've long believed that love, leadership, and power have something in common, and that is when you share love, when you share leadership, when you share power, there's more of it in the universe. And so that abundance mentality is super important, and sounds like one of your drivers as you pursued understanding yourself and understanding more about compassionate communication and nonviolent communication. Talk to us a little bit more about how you figured all that out and how that's affected your leadership, because it clearly has.
I know I'm telling you, I could talk to you all day about this. I get so excited about this topic, and I just feel so blessed that it came into my life, which is why I love having opportunities like this. And I love, Natalie, how you said it caught your attention at the speech retreat, because that's my hope. My hope is to plant the seed, and then the seeds grow. But I was introduced to it by a colleague, an occupational therapist who was long studying mindfulness, yoga, compassion-based practices, was really deep into all of that work. And I was going through some challenges at a school district, and she introduced me to it. And like I said, it was one of those things where even though it's a life practice, when you start to just use some of the little strategies in the beginning, you already start to see some of the changes, even when it just comes to regulating your own emotions, which is really where it starts, centering yourself, right? Just in centering yourself, it's like, oh, I can breathe. You're like, wow, I like that little tool. So, I clung to these little tidbits that were being introduced to me. And we created a study group with some friends. I had another SLP, a school psychologist, the OT that introduced me, myself, and then a friend not even in the sped world join our team. And we went through a workbook together. And I was just really enjoying all that I was learning. And one of the biggest things for me was that these practices were teaching me was that in life, these difficulties, these challenges, they're never personal. Everything I went through, the challenges all the way through my career, even in my life prior to my career, things that have happened, they were never personal. And Marshall Rosenberg, he has the best quote. And I think I hope I have this on, if anybody who likes it, it's on the Instagram handle at Golden State SLP. But he says, every criticism, judgment, diagnoses, and expression of anger is just the tragic expression of an unmet need. So when you think about that, when you think somebody's criticizing you, or you're criticizing yourself, or you're being judged, or you're judging others, or you're labeling someone as lazy or bossy or rude, or you're angry and you're throwing your hands up about something, all of that just boils down to needs. Your needs, if you're criticizing me, my needs, if I'm criticizing you. Like, it's that simple. We boil it down to needs. So I hung on to this. I thought this was so eye-opening. Like, wait, I'm not responsible for how you feel. You're not responsible for how I feel. Like, this is a hard pill to swallow, because I want to blame somebody right now with all these feelings that I have inside of me. But as I started to learn from these mentors, I took a 2-year course, a 2-year teacher. I'm certified as a teacher of mindfulness meditation and compassion-based practices. And it was a 2-year online training program, and it was with Tara Brach and Jack Kornfield, and out of Berkeley in California, the Greater Good Science Center. And they became my leaders. And I learned so many different things about paying attention to how we think, paying attention to our emotions, paying attention to our physical body, all of these, paying attention to just our breath, even when we're in conversation, in leadership, and in challenges. We can start to get nervous. We can start to pay attention to our breath. What's going on with our breath? Our breath is a message to us of our experience. And so all these tools and strategies I started to use, they were serving me. As I mentioned, my growth edges, they became my lessons, right? They no longer became something that I needed to criticize myself about or put myself down about, but I could hold these with compassion, right? So I have these growth edges that are now my lessons, as I mentioned, my training ground. And as I learn the tools to support myself in those, and I see the difference it makes in my life, I get so excited. I get so excited to share those. In fact, people have told me on my team, Stephanie, you're like a life coach. I'm not a life coach. I'm not certified to be a life coach, but these strategies are very similar to that because they're very supportive and they do help in so many ways reduce the suffering that comes from the challenges that we face. I love the strategies where we can take them and we can use them in our personal life and our professional life. So if somebody on my team is sharing something personal with me, unwork related, these strategies, I can still show up and be present for them and use these strategies.
I love it. I think what's really challenging about being a leader in any space, but especially in public education, in speech pathology and special education, is that as a leader, I not only need to be an excellent provider of care and compassion to others that are in my team and outside my team, but I also have to be an excellent provider of care for myself, right? And I can't be the leader I want to be for others if I can't take care of this thing, right? And I can't take care of my mind and my body. There's no way, right? It's like that the thing they say at the airport when you get on the airplane, you have to put your mask on first before you can assist others, right? And that kind of visual has always resonated with me. So, can you share with us what is compassionate communication? And could you frame it for somebody who's listening in who may be leading a team currently or is thinking like, maybe I want to step into a leadership role in the future?
Yes. And I love that you brought up that airplane thing is so amazing. And I hear it so often because it's so true. Put your oxygen mask on before you put anybody else's oxygen mask on so that you can be available to help someone else. Nonviolent communication, to answer your question, nonviolent communication is an amazing strategy for leaders. And you're right. We have to resource ourselves before we can resource anybody else. So we have to be able to fill up our own cups. And nonviolent communication really talks about, so in a nutshell, it was given to us from Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and it's a way of communicating, thinking, listening, speaking that comes from the heart space, that connects us to who we truly are authentically, right? Who we are authentically at the core. And we do so in a way where we have the intention to connect. Our main intention is to connect with others. So there's all these amazing strategies that are taught globally. This nonviolent communication is used worldwide in big businesses because it works, right? It's been used for years in top companies. And it's used in war. It's used, in the government. These are strategies that literally you can apply to any area of your life. And the reason these strategies are so successful is because I imagine is because what we're doing is when we make our priority to connect with another individual and to truly understand what's going on for them and what's going on for you. And we're able to remove our evaluations, empty out our faculties of our biases, our conditioning, if we think we're right or wrong, all of our judgments, all of that stuff that's so normal that can, go through our minds. If we can learn to empty that out and just be fully present with another person in their pain or their suffering or their challenges or just their sharing, the difference that can make in relationships, the difference that can make in connections. And in those connections, obviously, it ripples out. Like Judy, you were talking about things just, rippling out onto others. And it affects our productivity. It affects our joy on the job. It affects the environment that we're working in. So the process really is, I teach there's so many pieces and parts to it when it comes to how to express anger, compassionately, how to say no, how to create boundaries, self-compassion, compassion to others, empathy. There's so many little, we could spend an hour on each one of the little sections that they talk about, but I always just give the broad stroke for purposes of this to plant that seed of the 4-step framework. And the 4-step framework is observation as number 1, feelings as number 2, needs as number 3, and then requests as number 4. So what do I mean by observation? This is, Marshall says, everything is a moving away from. We are moving away from our evaluations and we're moving into observation. We should be skilled in observations as SLPs, right? So this is the idea that we are looking at something without judgment. So here it is. I see it. I'm going to say what I'm seeing without putting my opinion attached to it. Then we're moving into feelings, which is number 2. And feelings, we're moving away from non-feeling words into universal feelings. And we're connecting to what's alive in me right now. I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm worried. I'm nervous. And when I say we're moving away from non-feeling words, and again, for the purposes of I'll give just a quick little example because I know we have a lot to cover. But if I said, I'm being bullied could be a non-feeling word. Why? Because if I said, Natalie, I felt bullied by you, that could put you on the defense. That is a word that maybe has an underlying tone that says that you did something to me. But how does being bullied make me feel? I feel scared. I feel nervous. Frightened. So then I might change that word to say, I'm feeling frightened, bringing it back to that I language, bringing it back to myself so that we can remove some of that defensiveness that the listener might have when we're sharing. Then we're moving into needs, which is the 3rd step. And the 3rd step, Dr. Marshall Rosenberg says that our emotions, the pleasant ones, the unpleasant ones, these feelings that we talk about, they all come from met or unmet needs. And this is that point with that quote that I gave you in the beginning about how all the diagnoses, criticism, judgment come from unmet needs. It's like, how can we start to listen in a way that we're hearing what somebody is needing? How can we listen to ourselves to figure out what it is that we're needing? So if I'm angry or I'm scared, what is it that I'm needing right now? Am I needing support? Am I needing safety? Am I needing connection? So it's learning to now say, okay, this is the need I have, which takes us down the road to step 4 in the simplest terms I can share for this podcast. Step 4 is the request. And now Marshall says, we make a request that will serve us in life, not harm others, not at the expense of anybody else. But how can I ask for something to meet my needs or help someone else meet their needs in a way that's positive, clear, and actionable? Because even in that step, there's room for interpretation, confusion, disconnection. It's like, well, you didn't ask me that. That's not what I thought you said, right? So we want to be clear, positive, and actionable. And then we formulate our request in an attempt to meet our need. So it all kind of flows down that pathway. And I use that pathway in almost everything, in almost every story that goes through my mind, that story that I'm creating, as a leader. If somebody is sharing something with me, instead of going down the rabbit hole of my judgment, it's, now I'm judging them on that. And is that really the truth? Well, hold on, this is what I think. And I bring it back to, okay, what am I hearing them say? What are the facts here? What are they feeling in this moment? What am I sensing? And we can ask, are you feeling this way right now? Because you're needing this right now. What would you like to ask of me? So we can shape all of our experiences through that simple framework to help bring us together for a closer connection, one where it's not me versus you. It's not sitting down at the IEP table, us versus them. Right? Like people say, oh, there's always 2 sides to a story. Well, I heard a podcast and this stuck and I held on to it. What about the 3rd side? And the 3rd side is the collective side. What about the community? What about all of us? What about the team? What about all of us as members together? Okay, it's no longer what I have to say. It's no longer what you have to say. But can we look at this from the lens of the collective whole, the 3rd side, all of us collaborating together?
I really like that 4-step framework, Stephanie. And would love to hear some specific drill down examples of using that framework. So let me give you a scenario. So a leader of an SLP team in a school district has to often be the messenger of um, undesirable news. The psychologist got a $12,000 raise. The SLPs didn't get any raise. We had 5 vacancies. All of our positions just got cut. And the SLP leader is coming back to the group with bad news. So, can you just talk us through, and you can make up your own example. You don't have to use those super, super hard, but very realistic examples. But talk to us about using that 4-step approach in a scenario where SLP leaders are often faced with bringing news from outside of the group back to the group. And it is disappointing, discouraging, exhausting news.
Okay, so if you've been advocating for something and you're asking for something, and a lot of times you see in the school districts, we're often advocating for support, more support for our teams, which a lot of things boil down to money and to funds. So you'll see that a lot of people will say, our caseloads are too high. We need more SLPAs or more support. So maybe there's a lead team member that goes to the district and is asking for that support. And the district comes back and says, you know what, we don't have the resources for it. We don't have the funds for it right now. We can't do it. So we heard no, we're hearing no. The framework, it's hard. It's very hard to hear no. And the steps that I'm going to share might sound challenging and difficult. Take the pieces that work for you, leave the pieces that do not, that don't feel comfortable or feel too sticky. But again, we're looking at the collective, all of us together, this third side. And when we're doing that, it's no longer like us, the SLPs, versus them, the higher ups, right? How are we all together? So the first piece I like to share is empathy. We need to consider this invitation of empathy for the district, right? And empathy looks like, so learning the difference between sympathy and empathy. Empathy is standing in someone else's shoes. You're there with them in that experience, trying to really understand. You're like, I feel that pain. I see what you're going through. I see you. And in this moment, it's no different. So we're bringing that empathy to say, okay, I am understanding, or even if we're just telling ourselves right now, and we're not even necessarily having to communicate this with the district out loud. We're saying, okay, I'm understanding that the district is facing difficulties right now with funds, and it's a challenge for them. And that the people I'm asking have to go to someone else to ask for funds. It's a many layered process. It takes time. And I can see where this might be really challenging for them. And I'm sure, I imagine they want to support us and they want everything to flow and be on the appropriate timelines, but the money's not there right now. And it sounds like it's a challenge to get that. So then we're bringing some curiosity. Okay, I'm curious, who's involved in making this decision? How is this decision made? How is it? What are they prioritizing their money for? I'm wondering if I can understand other factors in determining how money is allocated, right? So maybe there is some curiosity, right? So we're bringing that empathy to their circumstances. We're bringing some curiosity on, well, how did they arrive at the no? What's real for them? What is their reality, right? Then we go through that process, that 4-step judgment. So we're observing, okay, I'm observing that the SLPs need support. We needed 2 SLPAs to assist. And the lead SLP asked the district said no. Their reason is they do not have the extra funds right now. There's no judgment in that. You hear how that's just the facts, right? I'm keeping it just the facts. Then I can go into my feelings. All right, how am I? I'm the messenger. How am I right now, this lead SLP, feeling about this? Well, I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling concerned. Maybe I'm feeling annoyed, right? Like, I'm so annoyed. Like, this happens all the time. Whatever is real for you, you can insert those feelings in that moment, right? We're all individuals and we all feel differently. So you insert those feelings. Okay, I'm feeling annoyed or upset right now. What are my needs? Okay, I need to connect back. And I love Marshall Rosenberg's, in his books, he has pages where he has like universal feelings and he has universal needs. And you can connect to some basic needs that we all have. And I love that they're universal because everybody can relate, right? It's like, I can relate to that, or I understand that, or I most likely as a human have a need for that. So what matters to me here? When we look at needs, what matters to me? What do I value? What's important to me? What do I desire? And I want to sit down with that. Okay, I have a need for support. It's very clear. I have a need for support. I have a need for ease in my job. Maybe I have a need for equity because the school psychologists have extra support to help them, and the SLPs do not have that extra support. Maybe I'm having a need for like this shared reality, because I hear this a lot from my own team members where it's like they just don't understand all that we're dealing with and all that we have to do aside from just direct services with the kids and how much time that takes. So maybe my need is this shared reality between us of like, what's real? What's going on here? Like, see it clearly. And then I have to formulate my request. So my request, if I'm self-advocating to the district, it's okay. I need to sit down and I need to say, all right, I need to ask them if they're willing to reconsider, how they're allocating funds, and if there can be a certain amount, X amount of dollars that can be advocated to the SLPs. And what I need to do is I need to say in a clear, positive, actionable way to the district, would you be willing to schedule a 30-minute or a 60-minute time block with me next week to sit down and have a conversation about how we can address, this burden that the SLPs are facing, and kind of talk about what's real for you from a financial standpoint, and see if we can strategize ways, because remember, we're strategizing, we're collaborating, right? We're trying to come together to come up with answers where everybody's needs matter, not just mine, not just yours, but can we think outside the box here? This is where the innovation happens. Can we think outside the box of okay, maybe, there's not extra funds, but maybe we have some of these resources floating around that could be dispersed differently, whatever the case may be. The request is, can we sit down for 60 minutes next week to have a conversation, to strategize ways to support the SLPs, and to also gather more information about, your decision on not being able to provide us SLPAs. Okay.
I love it.
It just went simple. It's not on the defense.
Right. It's so lockstep. And sometimes I feel like that kind of like very lockstep learning approach is like the great place to start, right? Especially if you're not feeling confident in the skill set, having kind of a lockstep approach is like where you can get much stronger at first to be able to apply it to different situations. The two needs that came to mind in this example, that when you were talking about the needs, for me, one need was I have a need for hope from my executive, whatever, or I have a need for vision.
Ooh.
Right? Like I need to see the vision, right? Because as the leader, sometimes like you are the one driving the vision for your team, and you're inspiring your team to see the vision, right? This is where we're going, people, right? It's not just about minutes of therapy and hitting assessment deadlines. The vision is XYZ, right? So I can imagine if they come back to you, if your executives come back to you and say, hey, we're not going to be able to give you more positions or give you a stipend or whatever, a need that might arise is, what's the vision? Right? Tell me.
I love that. And you know what I love about that so much? So vision and hope. What I love in hearing that, and this is what's shared in nonviolent communication when you really needle into it and you learn the strategies of NVC. Remember how I mentioned we're pulling away from non-feeling words into feeling words, or pulling away from evaluation into observation. So many people, and it's very normal, get stuck in thinking their needs are needs that are really strategies. So it's like, I need 2 SLPAs. So if we come forward and we're like, I need 2 SLPAs, 2 SLPAs is a strategy. So Marshall teaches how to move away from strategies into needs. My need is support, or my need is a vision. And maybe hearing no to 2 SLPAs is okay because maybe there's other strategies that are going to meet my need for support, for hope, or for vision. So when we can learn to move away from strategies and connect to what we're really needing, we open the table to this creativity, to this innovation, to thinking outside the box, that there's many strategies to meeting the need. So just hearing no doesn't close the door, because 2 SLPAs is just a strategy. It's not the need. But yes, there could be many strategies to meet vision. There could be many strategies to give you that hope that you're seeking.
That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so let's continue down this path, right? So you've received this no from your team, and now as the middle person, you have to turn around to the team that you represent and that you lead, and you have to share that news with them. Can you walk us through how you would frame that for somebody who's trying to share that message in the best way possible, if that's a thing?
Yes. It's the same framework. That's what's so cool. And you used a lockstep. Is that the term that you use?
Yeah.
I'm loving the vocabulary I'm learning on your podcast. I'm like, I need to write these down because these
I'm a speech language pathologist.
I know, but I'm lockstep. I love it. So just wanted to put that out there. So yes, delivering messages can be very hard for some, I imagine. For others, maybe not so. And I'm not sure where the listeners, whoever you are that's listening, where you fall on the spectrum of being able to deliver a hard message, and how do you do that? Mm-hmm. So I do think that the process is the same when we're looking at curiosity, when we're looking at empathy, we're looking at the 4-step pathway. You also have to look at your comfort level on, some people need to start in low stakes situations and build up to high stakes situations where they can walk in and they can really deliver that news. I always tell people, your emotional safety, your safety is most important. So if you're walking into a situation to share something and you just don't feel like that's a safe space to share, or you don't feel like you're in a comfortable way to deliver, that's okay. It's okay. You don't need to do it in that moment, or maybe there can be somebody else who can share the message for you. If you're feeling safe and it's just you're feeling a little nervous, I always say to practice in low stakes situations, right? Like this is going to help build your confidence for when you get to those higher stakes situations where it's like, now I'm at, a table with important leaders and I'm no longer just talking to my child at home. So when we are sharing these messages, it is important to turn the arrow back inward. So just give yourself that grace, give yourself that patience. Self-connection. This was something that we learned at that 10-day retreat I was telling you about. Self-connection really is the beginning to all of this, right? Practicing self-connection. So if I'm about to deliver this difficult message and I'm connecting with myself, I can check in. It's like a check-in, and I can say, okay, this feels hard for me right now, or I'm a little nervous to do this, or I'm a little worried about the reaction here. What's going on for me? So that's that 4-step process. I observe, my feelings, and I'm worried, that I'm nervous, that maybe my heart's racing, or I'm getting a little sweaty before I go to give this message. What am I needing right now? So checking in with yourself on what are my needs here. And I kind of talked about this too, on learning the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Because sympathy is when we're delivering these difficult messages and people are giving you feedback on that. Sympathy looks like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. And that might not connect with some people, I imagine. Whereas empathy is meeting them where they're at, really hearing what's real and alive for them, their feelings and their needs in that situation. But also tweezing out, and I talk a lot about this. I talk a lot about this in a course that I have where this might be new information for you guys, but deflective empathy versus empathy. And what is that? Because so many times we think we're showing up with empathy. We're delivering this difficult message that you're not getting the SLPAs that you really wanted. And we're getting feedback that people are angry or upset and talking over one another. And it's kind of coming down on you. You might think you're being empathetic, but deflective empathy might be an example is turning the situation. Well, you think that's bad. Listen to what happened at this other school district where they asked for support. Okay. Or deflective empathy might look like making it about yourself. Well, guys, how do you think I feel? I'm the one that had to go up there and I had to communicate and I had to. So really understanding what deflective empathy is versus empathy. So having that empathy for others. And I want to normalize, it's so normal. Sometimes we think we're showing up to be empathetic towards others, but we're not connecting because maybe the person's need is to just be heard. My mother's guilty of this. I'll call her and tell her of one of my challenges, and she's like, she's a fix it. She's like, oh, listen, don't worry, it's going to get better. She puts the positive spin on everything. And, but that's not my reality. And I really just needed you here to listen and to hear my pain. I just wanted to share it and kind of get it off my chest, as we say. So really kind of understanding your audience and what they're needing in that moment from you is really important. So that self-connection, connecting with others with empathy. I think having compassion for yourself on however you deliver that message, that self-compassion before you deliver that message, to say, okay, this feels hard. I know this feels hard. I'm here with you, talking to yourself and giving yourself that grace, but then also kind of having that compassion for others, extending it out to others. And that comes through, again, connecting back to their feelings and their needs and seeking to understand what they're going through in that moment. Or if you're, when we sit down with somebody and somebody truly is heard, or they think that they've been seen, or that they matter, what a difference this can make in preventing any escalation, in helping everybody regulate and helping everybody come back to the table and collaborate and strategize, because you're listening now in a way where you're not judging them. You're not adding anything else to the story. You're just open. You're not coming in with an agenda, but you're coming in to try to, a lot of times we come into conversations, and I'm not sure if this happens in your leadership, but we come in not realizing we're trying to control the situation. We want it to be this way. We want things to go that way, and they need to learn this, and they need to go down this road. But sitting back and trusting that, what can I learn here? What's something new that could happen here? What's the message in this if I'm not pushing my agenda on it? But I sit back and I'm willing to listen, and I'm willing to learn something new, and I'm willing to hear another, side to the story, where now we're all in this as a community and as a team.
Stephanie, I really like where you're going with all this, because if you're the messenger bringing that bad news about we didn't get the two assistants that we asked for, you're then kind of a conduit for the hope and the vision that Natalie was talking about were her needs, because you can use, as the leader, you can use clear thinking, clear language to say, well, the two assistants was that was a strategy to get to meeting our need. What is our need? Our need is for support. And so I have an appointment next week to talk to the higher ups. And what I would love to do right now is get some different strategies going to meet our needs. And then you can bubble up an energetic, positive, hope-giving conversation that is more productive than just saying, well, they said no. And
yes.
We feel funny about that.
You nailed it, Judy. Yes, that is exactly it. And you mentioned that you talk about the framework, just giving the facts on what they said and what you asked, what you requested, and here's where we are, and where do we go next from here?
So, Stephanie, I just really, I love that whole piece about talking to the higher ups and talking to your team in terms of some very present skills that leaders can practice. And I loved what you said about low stakes. I just love everything you're saying. So.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Tara Brock, she was the teacher in my mindfulness course, and she always said that there are two wings to mindfulness, kind of like the wings of a butterfly or an angel. And she said one is awareness and the other is compassion. So it's just really becoming aware and present and non-judgmental, like you said, seeing clearly, and then coming forward with that compassion for yourself, compassion for others as you're sitting down and you're strategizing with your team and the district as well. All of you, the third eye, the third side of the story.
Can I ask a slightly different question, kind of like along this vein, just maybe a different scenario? So as leaders, day to day, oftentimes in public education, a leader might feel like a fireman or a firewoman or a fire person, where you're just constantly in tactical kind of like problem solving mode, right? Phone call this, email that, person this, like you're just kind of as the whack-a-mole comes up, you're trying to whack the mole back down into the underground, right? That can get pretty exhausting, right? Because then you're spending your time here and you're not really spending time on that vision piece, that hope piece, that kind of forward thinking and strategizing end of the role, right? Can you talk to us, like, how do we manage kind of like that day-to-day whack-a-mole situation through this kind of mindset where you're compassionate with yourself and with the tasks in front of you?
So I'm gonna steal that and use that whack-a-mole, because I'm such a visual, and I'm seeing it. I'm seeing just, with the big hammer they give you, and you're literally just tapping down, and by the time you get it down, another one pops up. And that sounds like all of us in life, not even in leadership roles, but especially as LPs. We constantly, our to-do list is never ending, and it's always flowing. So are you asking me, just to be clear, are you asking me, like, how do we stay grounded in all of that? And how do we continue to move forward when there's still so many fires that are kind of taking our energy and pulling us in different directions?
That's exactly it. You just read my mind. Well done.
Yes.
This is
Okay.
it.
Yes. So I would say, for the purposes of our short talk today, I would say one of the biggest things that has supported me with, when my world is spinning around and I need to like hunker down, is grounding practices. So learning how to, remove all of the outside distractions and be able to come and just center myself. And I shared this on a podcast with Michelle Dawson on the First Bite podcast. We were talking about, how with ASHA, we have our 3 C's after the CCC-SLP. I said, it's a new spin. It's on the C's. It's center, connect, communicate. Because the first thing we need to do is we need to center ourselves, right? And that's that mindful presence. And for people who maybe don't gravitate towards the word mindfulness, there's a lot of people out there that don't subscribe to that. That's okay. Let me replace that word with awareness, just present, just being alert and aware, right, of the present moment that's going on. So there's a lot of strategies out there that when you're spinning around out of control or you're putting out a lot of fires, you need to ground. You need to come back to, and even if grounding isn't your term, how about anchoring, like a boat, right? We drop an anchor down into the water just to hold us still for a moment to collect ourselves. There are a lot of strategies out there to support you, whether your anchor is your breath, if it feels right for you, just coming back and connecting to the in-breath and the out-breath, or different type of breathing. There's all different kinds of breathing strategies out there that you can tap into on apps or on the internet. Maybe if for some, connecting to the breath could cause anxiety or it's not comfortable. So your anchor could be connecting to sounds in your environment. What am I hearing right now? There's a car outside. There's a bell ringing. There's kids running down the hallway. If I just need to ground myself, I'm in the IEP room. I've looked across the room before and I have found windows and I have slowly traced them with my eyes. And I have, and why? What does this do? Sipping a cup of hot tea, and, for all my medical SLPs out there, follow the path of the swallow, and, think about where it goes first, and pushing the bolus back, and all of this. Why? What do these do? These get us out of our thinking mind. Okay. Our mind is always thinking. Like, we can't just stop thoughts. And we don't want to stop thoughts. Our thoughts are innovative. They've created our world, right? And so, but what they do is they take a moment to say, okay, I see you thoughts. I see that you're there. I see the stories are running. These browsers are constantly going, but I'm going to X out right now. Like I'm going to come back to my breath. I'm going to get out of the story. I'm going to get out of the thinking mind. And what this does is there are studies to show that these strategies relax the nervous system. So they regulate you. So if you're nervous about going into a challenging IEP, if you're sitting down with your supervisor and you're about to get feedback and you're feeling uncomfortable, all of these strategies are there to support you with coming back to your body, coming back with centering yourself, regulating yourself, your body, your emotions, your mind. They're all connected. So I would say grounding practices are really good. Grounding practices are also really great from a leadership perspective. If I'm a leader going in to have a conversation, I'm like, okay, I know my thinking mind, my judging mind is going to come. I know my inner critic is going to come. Did I say that the right way to them? Did I hurt their feelings when I said that? Or how are they taking it? So I want to remove myself from that. I'm going to just take a few moments to take some breaths. I'm going to do the in breath. I'm going to do the out breath. I'm going to center myself. I'm going to get out of my thinking mind. And then I'm going to be a little more clear. It's going to bring more clarity. And then I'm going to walk into the situation and be open to hearing something new because I've regulated myself. So I think if you can ground yourself, I think if you can pause, I think pausing is a superhero, or a superpower is actually a superpower. Pausing is a superpower. How many of us are given feedback and we immediately want to our nervous system's triggered into that fight, flight, freeze? How many of us? It's so very normal. Like it's part of our makeup and who we are, right? And in some ways, our fight, flight, freeze can serve us. And in some ways, it's triggered unnecessarily and it doesn't serve us. So if we can learn to pause, if we can take that space, as the quote goes, it's Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power. And in that power lies our freedom, right? So that space, that pause between that stimulus and what we do next, we have a choice. We have a choice on how we want to show up, on who we want to be, on what we want to say, on what we want to do. But we need to create that pause so that we can get clear. So we ground, we pause. While we're pausing, we're grounding. Somebody gave us feedback. It's like, okay, I'm going to take a second with this and I'm going to breathe in, breathe out. If that feels awkward, because it's like, well, there's this awkward space, to sit there, because it can be uncomfortable to sit there in an awkward space. Use a phrase like, I'd really like to process this for a few minutes. Would that be okay? I really want to think about this before I respond. I do that in IEPs all the time. When parents catch me off guard, I don't want to be the person to just say something to say something. Okay. And a good filler too, a good strategy sometimes is I repeat back. So what I'm hearing you say is this. Did I get that right? Okay. Would it be okay if we move on? We'll put a pin in that. I'd like to really process that. And, I hold a lot of value to that. Like, this is an important topic and I want to be thoughtful in my response. Can we come back to that? So we can create these opportunities for ourselves to, okay, someone else is now talking. I'm sitting in my chair. I'm getting out of my thinking mind. I'm grounding myself. Maybe I'm doing a breath work. Maybe I'm tuning into noises around me just for a few moments. Okay. How do I want to respond to this? How do I want to show up in this moment? What do I want to say that brings the awareness and brings the compassion to the table? And then when you're ready to share, you share.
Love it. I think I would need to start there for sure. And maybe in some low stakes situations, like you suggested earlier, rather than trying to be able to do this with competence when the big show's happening, right?
Well, it's like our field, right? I mean, we
Exactly.
take baby steps in our field
Yeah.
and we get practice along the way and we build our confidence, we build our skill set, and we never stop learning. It's a life practice.
We usually get some sort of a T-shirt saying when we do a podcast, and we got the T-shirt saying when Stephanie said that the pause is our superpower.
I love it. I'm here for it.
It really is. I'm going to think about that a lot. So thank you for that, Stephanie. That's just
Oh,
amazing. I've always, I've done a lot of conversation and a lot of coaching and mentoring with SLPs about going into very difficult IEP team meetings when there may be attorneys or advocates or angry emotions running high. And learned way back early in my career that the more difficult the meeting you're going into, the slower your pace, so that you have time to center and you have time to center and ground, and you have a minute to pause before, so that you can respond well. And I didn't know that that was my superpower, but I did know I was supposed to slow down. So I'm happy.
yes, I love it. That's wonderful, Judy. And I love that you're sharing with the mentees how, just this scale of level of difficulty and the challenges that they will face, because it is very real. And it sounds like you're setting them up with seemingly very simple strategies to start off with. Just slow down. Just slow down in your approach. And I love that, because we can get so excited or we can get so nervous, and then all of a sudden we're saying all these things and we're not authentically connecting. It's like, well, I said that, but did I mean that? Or did that come out the way I intended it? Because we know that there are impacts, the way things land. There can be positive impacts to our words and our actions, and there can also be unintended impacts to what we say and what we do. So you're right. It's setting our mentees up to know that when we have these strategies in place, we can show up more of who we are at the core, right? And feel good about how we showed up and what we shared and how we connected with others in any of these trying circumstances, which they're just thrown into sometimes. They don't get they don't get the chance to slowly build up to the more challenging parents. Sometimes that's one of the first ones to show up in August or September. It's just the
That's
training
true.
ground.
That's true.
And you've given us so many strategies to handle difficult moments. I'm really also thinking about the times that I've struggled, because I don't like confrontation, and I don't like hot, angry emotions when they're running high, and don't like necessarily what people are saying to me, or what I'm feeling pressed to fix and say back to them. So there's so much that you've given us to get started with our continuous learning process that I am for sure, Stephanie, going to dig into Dr. Rossenberger's work, and to dig more into this whole thing of compassionate communication and nonviolent communication. It's just so much to think about. I'm just
Yeah.
excited.
And with what you said, Judy, I think that is so real and so true. So many people are going to relate to that, to how it feels to sit in that type of confrontation, right? When things are escalating and people are getting angry and emotions are flying. And the littlest golden nugget I could tell you just to start doing is almost treat it like a science. Treat it like a science. Like, when we hear a song, it's like we drop below the song to look at the musical notes that are like written, on the page. Drop below the words. So when next time someone's angry, the next time you're in a confrontation or emotions are running high, see if just out of curiosity, just bring curiosity to yourself and say, I wonder if right now, if I just listen to what this person's saying, if I could connect to maybe what they're needing, that universal needs bank that Stephanie was talking about. Like, when they're saying this right now, what do I think they're needing? What do I think they're feeling? Because what we're doing is we're moving away from taking ownership or responsibility, and we're connecting now to what's real for them. They're very angry right now. Like, why do I think they're very angry? What do you think is the underlying message here? And treat it like a science, like you're this detective trying to figure out the feelings and the needs beneath the words.
I love it. All right, Stephanie. So, whenever we wrap up an episode with any of our guests, we have a couple of questions that are not super speechy specific. So, our first question to you is, can you share with us maybe like a book or a movie or a song that really has inspired you or motivated you recently?
Yes, and I have the perfect book right now. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm reading it right now, and this is called Tattoos on the Heart, and it's by Gregory Boyle. And I picked up this book because Gregory Boyle he is a Jesuit priest in Los Angeles, and he started Homeboy Industries. And Homeboy Industries is a gang rehabilitation program. So Los Angeles, unbeknownst to me before reading this book, is the gang capital of the world. Didn't know I was living in the gang capital of the world, Los Angeles. And so talk about leaders. This man, he was doing work in Bolivia, came and said he wanted to do work in the poorest church. He said, bring me the poorest of people. I want to serve them. And he was put into a church in Los Angeles. And then over, his story and time, he started to interact with members from the gang. And he has this, he says, all people are wholly acceptable. All people are light. Nobody is less than. And he became this leader for people who are leaving gangs and are looking to start a life. And he has just this boundless love for them and acceptance for them and hope for them. And in this book, he's just sharing all these different stories. Some of them are heartbreaking. I'm crying. Some of them I'm laughing. And just the reality of some people's lives and how one person in their life can change the whole trajectory of like where they're going and what they're going to experience, and how non-judgmental this man is, how this Jesuit priest is to empty out all his faculties and meet people where they're at. He uses their language. He calls them homies. He's fun. Like he gets into conversations with that. Like he meets them where they are at, and he helps them rise above. And it's just a true testament to leadership and to accepting and loving everybody wholly and fully with everything that they bring with them. So that's the book I'm reading right now. I haven't finished it, but let me see. I am 2/3 of the way through it, and I can already say, get your hands on
It's
this
a good
book.
one. I'll have to add that.
You've read it?
No, I'll have to add it to my audiobook list. I've been doing a lot of audiobooks lately, so I'll have to add that to my list because I'm always looking for good reads. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
So you share with us a little bit that you have a child at home. So tell us a little bit about your family tradition. Like, do you have just a favorite family tradition that you like to do?
Yes, I do, because we're coming into the season of Elf on the Shelf. So I have to get it in as many years as I can get it in. So that is our tradition in our home. I love Elf on the Shelf because obviously she loves it and she's excited about it. But I also love it because it meets so many needs for me. Like it gives me the opportunity to be creative. I love creativity. So thinking of like the fun things that the elf can do and where you can hide him and where he can be. It's like really exciting. It meets my needs for humor because it's often like funny situations that the elf gets into. It meets my needs for fun in the family. Her dad chips in and sometimes has the elf doing all things soccer related. Every time it's his turn, it's something to do with an Argentine soccer team. But it just really brings our family together. It meets our needs for connection and magic in the family. So I absolutely love the Elf on the Shelf tradition. And I've always told myself, because I run out of ideas, I'm not going to start it until like 10 days before Christmas. And then I end up always popping her out. Her name's Elfita. My daughter named her. I always pop her out on December 1st because I just get so excited. I'm like, it lets my inner child out too.
I love it. Hey, Judy, did you do Elf on the Shelf, or do your grandkids do Elf on the Shelf?
Yes, my grandchildren do Elf on the Shelf. And it gets pretty hilarious. It gets pretty hilarious. That elf is a character.
Oh, I'm going to be really unpopular here. I refuse to do Elf on the Shelf. I have a 3.5-year-old. I'm sure he's going to learn about it probably this year. I feel like this year will be the year that other kids are starting to become like more aware in his preschool classroom of this happening. I'm going to hold out as long as I can because I'm a creative person, but that's a big commitment. And I just don't know if I can do it.
That's a freak out when it's midnight and your eyes open in the dark and you go, forgot. Yeah, there's a lot of freak outs
That
there.
would be me. Last question for you, Stephanie. What is leadership to you in one word?
Yes. So leadership to me in one word is empowerment.
Well, I'm certainly feeling very empowered with our conversation with Stephanie today. I love the idea of using a framework approach to coach and to mentor people that are working with me and for me, but also to use with myself to kind of identify like what steps of the process am I already feeling very competent and comfortable with, and which steps do I need to spend more time in, get some more feedback from trusted colleagues, and do some more thinking about. So for all of our Lead Speak community, Stephanie is offering us an opportunity to transform our communication skills and forge deeper connections with her dynamic professional development course. Join now to uncover a treasure trove of invaluable tools and techniques. And as a listener to this podcast, Stephanie is offering us 50% off of her course price with the coupon code LEADSPEAK. In her program, Stephanie will talk to us about unlocking the secrets to fostering empathy and understanding in every interaction, learn to navigate away from common deflective listening pitfalls with expert guidance, master the art of active listening with actionable tips and tricks, discover a 4-step pathway to establish stronger connection and foster collaboration, dive into real-world scenarios to hone in your fluency in navigating conflicts, and engage in immersive exercises designed to boost your presence and mindfulness. Don't miss this opportunity to supercharge your communication powers and cultivate meaningful relationships. Enroll today in Stephanie's course to begin your transformative journey towards empowered connection and collaboration. Until next time, take care.